Hello, freedom fighters. I am very pleased and proud to contribute to the campaign launch for the Liberal Democrats in WA, and particularly Kate Fantinel's campaign for the Senate. I have a pretty good idea what Kate is in for if she gets elected. As you probably know, I was elected to the Senate at the 2013 election and re-elected at the following election in 2016. I resigned in April 2019 so I could run in the New South Wales state election. Duncan Spender took over my Senate seat for a couple of months. Those years in the Senate were pretty eventful, and they show what can be achieved if the Liberal Democrats win seats in the federal parliament. First, it helps us to win seats in state parliaments. After I was elected, Aaron Stonehouse won a seat in the WA state parliament. Then David Limbrick and Tim Quilty each won seats in Victoria's state parliament. It also helps increase awareness of the party and what it stands for. All of us, Aaron, Tim, David and I, are strong advocates of small government and personal choice. As soon as I was elected, I vowed that I'd never vote for an increase in taxes or a reduction in liberty. Then Aaron, David and Tim each gave the same undertaking. Between us, we got a lot of people thinking about these things. But being in the Senate by myself was tough going. I made a difference here and there, but if we'd had half a dozen senators, we could have transformed Australia. In my first week in the Senate, I voted against the removal of a tax cut. My vote, with the vote of Bob Day, who I hauled across the chamber with me, made the difference. The lower tax stayed, but that was a rare situation. Bob Day wasn't a Liberal Democrat, so most of the time I only had one vote. Mostly, it was only possible to make small differences by negotiating behind the scenes. But I'll mention three examples. One was securing a long-term lease for the New South Wales Rifle Association over the Malabar Rifle Range, the most important range in New South Wales. Another was the creation of the position of Wind Farm Commissioner to improve the appalling behaviour of the wind farm industry. But no, I couldn't kill off the subsidies. And the third was getting the government to report taxes, expenditure and GDP on a per capita basis in the budget. Each of these was negotiated through leverage, and they each remain in effect today. The lease of the rifle range is rock solid for 50 years. The National Wind Farm Commissioner is now the Australian Energy Infrastructure Commissioner, not only dealing with complaints about wind farms, but also large-scale solar farms, energy storage facilities, and new major transmission projects. And if you look at the budget papers, you'll see on table 10.11 of budget paper number 1, per capita, revenue, payments and debt compared to GDP. I managed to establish some inquiries too into the nanny state, red tape, the Murray-Darling Basin and agricultural levies. These provide additional opportunities to change minds. But the truth is, there is a limit to what can be achieved. I introduced a good number of private members' bills, amongst them a bill to legalise cannabis, legalise vaping, remove insult and offend from Commonwealth legislation, and allow the ACT and Northern Territory to legislate on assisted suicide. None of them became legislation. In the state parliaments, making a difference has been even more difficult. The government in WA rarely needed Aaron's vote, so while he came close to getting airsoft legalised, in the end he failed. In Victoria, Dictator Dan has never needed our vote, so while David and Tim objected loudly, they couldn't stop his imposing his dreadful state of emergency COVID regime. The reality is Australia did not become a libertarian paradise because one Libertarian senator got elected, or even because 3 Libertarians became state MPs. In fact, what we have seen over the last 2 years is that we are a very long way from that. As a party, we also have some catching up to do. As you know, I didn't get elected to the New South Wales Parliament. We then lost our Senate seat in the 2019 federal election, and we lost our seat in WA State Parliament. But this election is the best opportunity we are ever likely to have to gain that ground back again and better. In the party's 21-year history, there has never been a time when freedom, personal choice, and government finances have been more on the minds of Australians. If ever they are going to vote based on these things, it will be this election. For more than 2 years, we've been subjected to the most authoritarian restrictions in the country's history. National and state borders closed, separating families and loved ones. Long, brutal lockdowns when you couldn't go anywhere. Even curfews in the eastern states with thuggish, brutal police enforcement. Masks everywhere, long after they were shown to make no difference. I call them the bunny rugs of the pandemic. Coerced vaccination just to go to a cafe or restaurant, and in many cases just to keep your job. Closed schools, with many kids missing out on 2 years of education. Parliament suspended, enabling tin pot dictatorial state premiers to impose these restrictions without challenge, or allowing unelected bureaucrats equally incompetent, but also cruel and heartless, to rule our lives. Then there was the massive spending program to prevent all these measures from destroying the economy, or at least the private sector, borrowing and printing money as if it was free and limitless. Except it's not free, and there is a limit. It's left us with $1 trillion of government debt that we'll be paying off for generations. And many people are now very much aware of that. Not all of these things can be laid at the feet of the federal government, but a lot can be. The huge cash splash, for a start. Closed national borders, preventing Australians from returning to their own country. It was even a crime to return at one point. Using the Defence Force to prop up state lockdowns and state border closures. The refusal to challenge state border closures in the High Court, despite the Constitution being very clear that it wasn't allowed. The failure to push back against the worst of the state measures, including the police brutality. What we now have is a lot of very cranky people. And in WA, with many restrictions still in place, they have plenty of reason to be especially cranky. It is those people, the people who lost their jobs, their businesses, their freedom, their dignity, and are concerned about their future, who are going to vote for parties like the Liberal Democrats. We can see this in the polls. Support for both the Liberals and Labor is in the mid-30s, unprecedented to be that low. Support for other parties in total is close to 30%. And that's for House of Reps votes. It will be far higher for Senate votes. We don't need 30% of the vote to win a Senate seat. We only need about 7%, even less with preferences. If we got 30%, we'd win 2 or 3 seats in a state. Imagine that. This is our time. This is our election. That's where Kate comes in. We need to get her elected, along with our candidates in other states. Kate was my media advisor when I was in the Senate, so I know her well. She's a keen sporting shooter like me. She's a committed libertarian, as am I. She's smart and learns fast. She'll quickly work out how to leverage her vote to make a difference. She's genial and works well with others. That's important in politics. You have to get on with people. She's also young and energetic, which I'm not. Being in Parliament, particularly federal Parliament, is a 24/7 job. There is no downtime. It's one of the reasons I didn't want to keep doing it. Kate will make a great senator. We also have great candidates in the other states. Campbell Newman in Queensland, John Ruddock in New South Wales, David Limbrick in Victoria, Topher Field in Tasmania, Kenelm Tonkin in South Australia. And if they're elected, along with Kate, we will make Australia a much better place. House of Reps candidates are obviously important too. Just imagine what we could do if we held the balance of power in both houses. And if ever there was an election in which we can get them elected, it has to be this one. Let's do everything we can to make it happen.